everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here with another episode of the Daly Express. I have a very special guest today. She's a popular blogger, a public speaker, an MC, an influencer, a brand consultant, a media personality. She does it all from the great state of Wyoming. It's Cathy Holman, also known as Prairie Wife. How's it going today, Cathy?
It's going amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. I cannot wait to chat with you and to cover all the topics, apparently.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining me. It's great having you on. You and I have known each other for quite some time online, but I think this is our first actual conversation. So it's good to know that you are in fact a real person. There's been
I
some
am.
discussion. Very good, very good. And I asked you on because I'm actually quite fascinated with the Prairie Wife brand, and I always appreciate your optimism and your enthusiasm and the advice you give to people. Can you talk about your background a bit and the Prairie Wife moniker and what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story is city girl, gone country. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we went on a family vacation to Wyoming. And I was like, oh, I'm going to live here. And my parents were like, okay, 13-year-old, that's fine. Came time to apply for college, and I only applied to the University of Wyoming because I wanted to marry a cowboy. And everyone knows you find cowboys in Wyoming, right? And at UW, they are the cowboys. So went out there for college, and I met the man I would later end up marrying when I was 19 years old. I graduated from the University of Wyoming with a degree in education. I was a first grade teacher for 5 years and then ended up staying home for 11 years. And we have 5 children. We've been married for 20 years, and we live, I call it the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. If you're familiar with Wyoming, it's not the middle of nowhere. If you're from anywhere else, it's the middle of nowhere.
Well, I think you provide your followers with a real taste of the state, especially the outdoors. I grew up
Yeah,
here in Colorado, just below your state.
we
There's
can be
definitely
friends anyway.
what's that?
I said we can be friends anyway.
That's right. That's right. I don't think there's that much of a competition. Maybe there is. I don't know. But there's definitely some regional cultural crossover between the two of us. The state line's about an hour from where I live, so I've actually spent quite a bit of time in Wyoming, and I do enjoy it. I joke with you sometimes how the first thing that travelers see when they leave Colorado and enter Wyoming are fireworks stands and strip joints. But to be
Some would
clear,
say that sums up Wyoming very well. There are some of us that feel like if you get a little bit further into the state, you get a better picture, but to each their own, right?
that's right.
And that's actually, that right there is how the whole Prairie Wife brand started. When I was staying at home, we live outside of town. My husband was gone 5 days a week working, which is pretty typical for Wyoming that, one or both people have to travel for work. And all my friends back east, I'd post about killing rattlesnakes in the yard, about breaking ice in the water trough to feed the horses because there was no one but me to do it. Didn't matter if I was 9 months pregnant or just had a baby. Things had to be done. And they would all be like, what? Like without hot water for a week? What are you talking about? And I started calling it earning a Prairie Wife badge when I could make it through something that was completely out of my comfort zone. And then I started a mommy blog. It'll be 11 years this October, called Prairie Wife in Heels, which combines that city girl, country girl. And it just took off. It started as blogging, and then I was a not a guest poster, a guest on local TV shows as like the parenting expert. They'd have me on the news. Oh, how do you get your kids ready for school? That led to a radio show that I had for 5 years. And then 2 years ago, I left that to focus on the blogging, the social media, speaking, emceeing, auctioneering, all these other things that kind of came along as I built that Prairie Wife brand.
Absolutely. And I was, joking about the fireworks stands and strip joints, but
It
it
actually is true. That's not a joke. That is true.
that is true, but it does not represent the state, of course. And what I appreciate about Wyoming, really, and this is sort of what you've been describing, is sort of the frontier culture, the open space, small town communities, the simple life. Not so much the wind. I'm not a big fan of the wind, but I am a big fan of jackalopes. They are
Yes.
wonderful, terribly underrated animals. You sent me something. You said that there's never actually been a jackalope that's been captured. Is that correct?
No, they are very elusive. I know multiple people that have gone jackalope hunting in Douglas, Wyoming, which is where they first originated, were found and discovered. You can actually get a jackalope hunting license. Little known fact.
Wow, wow.
Yep.
And those people that went out hunting, did all of them make it back? Did they survive that?
You
Did you
know,
count?
I've heard some pretty tall tales, especially when you get past that 1 a.m. on Friday or Saturday night time of hunting them, where, people have had some very strange run-ins. I know my kids are always on the lookout for them when we're driving up and down that I-25 there, and they have yet to spot one. So,
Understood. So you've described yourself a couple times now as a city girl before you moved to Wyoming. You said you were
yep.
from Milwaukee. What about Wyoming do you think that people who've never been there would be most surprised by?
So, when I describe Wyoming to other people, whether it's through podcasts or friends or relatives, I like to say that Wyoming is what America was, and that's not a bad thing. I think that there are a lot of people that look down their nose at Wyomingites because you can wear jeans anywhere. Oftentimes, you will see us covered in dirt and mud. And frankly, there's no point in doing your hair when the second you walk out, you're hit with 45-mile-per-hour steady wind and 90, right? So we are a very blue collar state, working state overall. And I think people look down on that, thinking that we're uneducated. We are all about community at any point in time. If the weather's bad, my neighbor's going to text me, "Hey, I'm running into town. Do you want to save a trip? Do you need milk?" There is that community aspect where we watch out for each other when we're gone. People keep an eye on our animals. And it's like that 1950s Americana, but a lot of people also take it to the women don't have value. Or again, I reference a lot of times people think that Wyomingites aren't intelligent, and that's just not true. We just have different things that we value. And there was certainly a culture shock for me when I first started dating my husband, who's a fifth generation Wyomingite. I said, if we ever get married and have kids, we're not even having pretend guns in the house.
Hmm.
Because growing up in Milwaukee, guns killed people. I dated a guy whose brother was shot in a drive-by. And when you're a young teenager, you're used to your perspective. I went to the grocery store and got food. Hunting wasn't on my radar at all, right? So when I first came, I really had what would be considered now a liberal mindset. Well, you live in Wyoming long enough and you realize that shooting, hunting, guns literally are feeding families. We have 5 children. They eat elk, they eat deer. I shot a mountain lion this year. We ate mountain lion. We eat mountain lion. We use that to provide and feed for our family. Same with ranching. We have chickens. We have a rotating number of pigs and cows. So that rural lifestyle that people look down upon, it's actually a self-sufficiency we're proud of. And a lot of that lifestyle that comes with it, owning firearms, things that have become political, it's how we provide for our families. And we're not exaggerating when we say that. So I guess I wish when people think of Wyoming and they think of some of the old school ways of life we have, they see that as a beautiful thing, a valuable thing, an interesting thing, not something that makes us less than. And I know I kind of just did like a TEDx talk, so I apologize.
Oh no, no, that I thought that was very insightful. It's funny because I follow you on social media, and when you talked about the mountain lion, I remember that picture coming up. It always catches me off guard because I'm always expecting. Sometimes I have a little bit of a slow internet connection. I'm expecting there to be a puppy or something in the photo when it starts. Like, okay, gotcha. But no, you're right. It's very much a part of the culture. It's very interesting. I mean, I see a lot of it down here in Colorado, but I think it's on a whole nother level up there in Wyoming.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is survival and a way of life for so many families because Wyoming's economy, we are so dependent on the energy industry. We are so dependent on tourism, and both of those are like this. So the more we can do to cut costs, to be stable, to kind of provide for our own and not have to rely on policy or anyone else, the more Wyomingites like that way of life. At least that's my experience. There are always exceptions to the rules. There are people that live in town that have never ridden a house, that don't like hunting, that don't own firearms, right? You can't pigeonhole all of us.
No, and I think self-sufficiency is a really good thing, and I think it's represented well in your state. Um, Now you are an influencer who, you talk about various products and services. You're always in front of the camera, sort of modeling various things, as am I, but that's a whole different thing that I won't get into right now. That's a private site sort of thing. We won't talk about that. But
What about OnlyFans? Oh, sorry.
yes,
Is that not where you were going?
no, it's funny because I just a little sidebar. I was not picturing that, but I think I once I saw someone on TV mention OnlyFans, and I genuinely didn't know what it was. And I said something like, "What is that?" And my wife looks at me like, "Yeah, you don't know what that is." And I'm like, "I honestly have no idea what that is." And I did a little research. Now I know what it is. But
Yeah, now you know what it is. Yeah.
that's right. For people who are confused about what we're talking about, you can Google it, and I'm sure
Yeah,
it'll
and
be
I don't do that. Let me just make that clear. That is not the kind of influencing this Catholic mother of five does. Okay, just putting that out there.
exactly. Everybody, calm down, please. So, but but going back to the thing about being an influencer. I think most younger people in this country understand what that means, what it means to be an influencer, especially online influencers. But I have a sneaky feeling that the Daily Express listeners tend to average a bit older than our youngest, because I'm old. I mean, I'm kind of old, sort of old.
We're
So
the same age, man. So what does that make me?
I think I'm actually quite a bit older, but I'm not sure if that's we'll figure it out later. I don't want to ask anybody's age on here, but
I'm
can you?
42. I'm proud of it. I'm okay with it. I'm a child of the 80s.
Okay, so we're about a decade apart, so I'm a little
Same
older.
age. Same age.
Yes, we'll go for that. We'll say that. But can you explain for those who don't know what an influencer is?
So there's all sorts of layers, varieties, and levels of being an influencer. So when I started blogging, when I started doing radio, TV, and my number of followers online and people in person and around the community began to know who I was, who I stand for, a certain level of trust between me and the people that read the blog and follow me on social media, which I worked very, very hard for. Local businesses started to come to me, and I actually call them Prairie Wife partnerships. So it's local businesses. At this point, I actively only work with Wyoming women owned businesses. I have turned down other opportunities to work with different brands that don't fit into that because my main source of income comes from speaking, emceeing, and auctioneering. I can have those kind of limitations. There are other people that anyone that comes to them that they like, they're going to take money from. So for the Prairie Wife partnerships, I'll take pictures or do video wearing outfits and then tag the business and let people know, hey, go buy it. So really, it's just an ad. It's just an ad from someone that people know and trust. So for example, like the earrings I'm wearing are from a local business that I work with. So if someone says, oh, I saw you wearing this, where are they from? It's just an organic way, or an authentic way in my case, for me to help local businesses sell their product. So that's really what influencing is. And then it can turn into whatever kind of beast you want. You can make tens of thousands of dollars off of it. You can create 50 videos and pictures a day. I choose to kind of keep it on this end of my income because then I can really be careful about who I'm working with, what I represent. I've worked way too long to be like, here's a 14 karat gold face mask that costs $200. Like my people aren't, like people that follow Prairie Wife aren't going to be into that, right? That doesn't work for me.
Now, you mentioned how a lot of these you have these photos that you post online. I noticed in a lot of these photos you're laughing in a somewhat uproarious fashion, and
It's the Prairie Wife smile, man. It's patented.
that's right. So I did want to get to dig into this a little bit. Are you really laughing in those photos, or is that sort of a stage laughing?
Well, I feel like people that have like watched this interview have seen how often like I do just laugh and make weird facial expressions. So I'm going to say like 75% of it is real and then 25% of it is because who's going to buy an outfit from someone that looks like their puppy just got ran over by a pickup truck? Like that's not going to work, right? But anyone that has followed my brand long enough has seen pictures of me with no makeup, my house trashed, Like I was just at the beach with my kids, so there's a picture of that. I'm not wearing any makeup. I just have a baseball hat on. So while there are definitely pictures that are staged and I make sure the lighting's great, the nature of who I am where I'm out in public, people are going to notice if I'm over filtering this. Like if they are seeing pictures of me and then I'm on stage in front of them emceeing an auctioneering and mama looks like 15 years older and like I don't have teeth or something, like, so it is really important that I do that. And when I specifically started my brand 11 years ago, I knew I lived in a small town. I know I live in a state where everyone knows each other. It was incredibly important to me to be who I am online and offline, because without a doubt, I'll be at Target and later on someone will send me a picture and be like, I saw you with your kids at Target. I didn't want to interrupt you, but blah, 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 blah. So they're watching. And again, they're going to know if I'm yelling and screaming and swearing at my kids in Target, yet I just put a video up about gentle parenting, which by the way, I am not a gentle parent. I would never put an article up about that. That's not my jam. But right, I've been very conscious of that authenticity and that relationship that I have, because eventually I'm going to probably want to stop doing this and I'm going to need to live my life. And it's important to me that there's not any fallout from that.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I was surprised you mentioned that being in the store and people taking pictures of you. Isn't that stalking? Do they have stalking laws in Wyoming?
It would be stalking if they were like threatening, as opposed to like, you looked adorable or I saw you. But no joke, like when my husband, which I don't use my kids' real names on the blog or when I had the radio show or any of that, they have nicknames. Just like there are some people that still don't know my real name is Cathy. I did a workshop, and when I introduced myself as Cathy, literally one of the attendees gasped and they were like, I had no idea you like that was your real name, right? Like, so there is some separation with that. And I just totally lost my train of thought because I was thinking about how funny it was that she didn't know I had a real name with that. What were we talking about, John? Like, see,
Oh,
authenticity right here.
yeah, yeah. Picture authenticity. I
Oh yeah,
found.
they take pictures. Yeah. So my husband and I have been out in public on a date, or he's a cowboy and I love to dance, so we'll country swing dance, and I'll have people I don't know sending me videos being like, "Oh, thought you would want to have this video or this picture because you guys look cute together." So as long as it's nice, I don't consider it stalking.
Okay, okay. No,
Yeah,
that's
that's where we
that
were.
description is actually, it feels much more innocent. I found myself when I'm posing for pictures, I look much better when I look kind of angry, and I don't know, I don't know if it's because my face is thinner. It's like I think it looks. I don't know. Anyway, we won't dwell on that. But
I will say that I know you probably have seen these. There's a whole series of pictures I do called the Many Faces of Prairie Wife, because
yes,
when I'm working an event, like the photographers will take pictures, and because I just am a naturally, like I make a lot of facial expressions. There's one where I'm with Terrell Davis and it looks like we're singing to each other just because of the way our like facial expressions are. So I don't know. I think it's funny. So I say you do you, and whatever makes you feel confident, that's what you use for your, book jacket picture.
exactly. See, I'm not. I think funny faces are great. So those are probably some of my favorite photos. I mean, so
Yeah, right.
I like that. So, one of the things I like about you, Cathy, in addition to your sense of humor and your willingness to put up with my antics, is that you provide very useful, helpful tips. As you mentioned, I'm not exactly your target audience, so a lot of the fashion stuff, for example, doesn't necessarily apply to me. But you also talk about things like health, parenting, even like social media promotion. What I especially appreciated a few months ago, when a good chunk of the country could see the Northern Lights, was that you were sharing these helpful camera tips on how to capture
Yeah.
that moment. You were posting some amazing images up there, and I was hoping to actually use your tips, but the Northern Light, as far as I can tell, it stopped like 5 miles from my house because everybody
Oh,
looked a little bit north of me saw 'em. But regardless, I get the impression that it's very rewarding to you personally to help people sort of understand things better and enjoy life more. Am I right about that?
Yeah, and I think that comes from that aspect. I mean, technically, if we're talking about what my life plan was, I was a teacher. Like, I always wanted to be a mom, but then I wanted to be a teacher because that was the closest thing. So I think organically, what has happened is I now use my platform to educate people. And the great thing is when I created the brand Prairie Wife, it was kind of meant to be, like a lifestyle, a mommy blog. And now it's just changed into this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm doing. And if I'm struggling with it, or if I learn something, of course I'm going to share it with you. Same with the products that I like, right? That's why I work with businesses that I already was a partner, or, I already shopped at, and then they say, hey, would you mind? Because as a woman, nothing's better than finding a great place where you can walk in and feel comfortable and there's good people helping you. And with the photography tips, I spent 2 hours reading tons of articles. So why not take that and make life easier for someone else? And right now, our oldest son is going to college. We drop him off on Friday. And so there's been a lot of content about that. Because if I'm going through it, if I'm experiencing it, I know there's got to be someone else. And one of the things we haven't mentioned is I underwent a preventive mastectomy 8 years ago. And at that time, when I made the decision to have it, I was still nursing our youngest child, but I had 5 children under the age of 8, I think it was. And I went online to research what is that going to be like as a young mother, and there was nothing. Nothing. And so I already had my blog as a platform. And so I shared that whole entire journey from pre-op appointments to why I was having it to week by week pictures of all the surgeries and everything like that. And I still, to this day, every week get an email, a letter, or a message from someone that says they found my blog and thank you because it gave them the information they needed to make the best choice for them. And to me, that alone is worth the time and energy, because while it's fun and it's great, as you know, so much time goes into writing articles, taking pictures, planning content, even though mine's very organic and like, what are we doing today? Let's take a picture of it. Let's share. There still is hours and hours that go into creating things that hopefully are valuable to other people. And from the beginning, my mission was to help other people lead a life of grit and grace. If you go to the blog, if you go anywhere, that's my jam. And I think that means helping you with parenting. I think that means, look, my son had to write 1 billion essays. Here's some shortcuts for you so you don't have to sit and pound your head on the kitchen counter and weep like we did as we were going through the process, and mothering and things like that. And there are some posts too about marriage, but there are also some very clear-cut privacy lines that I have as well to make sure, yes, I'm helping people, but also in the end, my family's mental health and their ability to lead their lives in a way they need to, that's what matters the most.
And I know people do appreciate that for sure. You mentioned you get these emails of people thanking you. A few years ago when my son he was diagnosed with it was sort of really a surprise, severe scoliosis, and we went through this whole process. And I wrote quite a number of columns about it. And I too, I hear from parents who, it's one of those things where you assume there's going to be a lot more out there online to sort of help people navigate these issues, but it's surprisingly there's not. So anything I think like that is helpful, from a personal perspective. A few weeks ago, Cathy, I saw this. This is sort of a different topic here, but I saw this news clip of a congressional hearing where an attendee, someone who was sort of a troll, was in the crowd, and they stood up and started loudly and obnoxiously heckling members of Congress. And one of the congressmen was previously an auctioneer. And so in front of the microphone and quite loudly, he started doing this make-believe bid calling where he was talking really fast and completely drowning out the heckler until the security showed up and dragged her away. To me, that was like the coolest thing ever. Now, the reason I bring this up isn't just a random thought. It's that you are an auctioneer as well. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, have you ever done something like that where if someone's really annoying you, you jump right into the auction thing and just kind of drown them
Do
out?
my kids count?
Yes, yes.
No, I have to say the auctioneering thing, I usually only use it professionally, though I do have a lot of people when they find out that I am, they're like, really? And so then, of course, I give them an example, which whatever you want to do if you want me to. I will say there is auctioneer school where you can pay thousands of dollars. You go, and it's kind of like an auctioneering boot camp where you stay for a whole week and you learn all the things. I was baptism by fire when I got hired at the radio station. The person that was going to auctioneer was sick one day, and they're like, guess what you get to do? You're not just emceeing, you're auctioneering. And I watched a YouTube video, talked to one of my friends who is a professional sale barn auctioneer, and then it's just kind of taken off from there. And I don't even know how many hundreds of events I've auctioneered now. So it's just one of those baptism by fire, and you get better and better. And I still apologize to the people that were there for the first couple months because it wasn't pretty.
Well, it's funny because I used to have sort of a sour feeling toward auctioneers because one of my first jobs when I was, I think, 16 years old, I worked in an auto auction where I would drive these used cars through the bay, and they had the guy who was auctioning them off to car dealers, and he loved kind of like making fun of the drivers, and so I was getting just destroyed every time I was driving through this.
You'd be like, and I've got John up here and he ran over someone's foot, and then now I need to go ahead and we're going to take $50 off the price, and like stuff like that.
Exactly. So I'm wondering, did a little bit of a taste there. If you were, for example, let's say at some event where you were auctioning off one of my books, the Sean Coleman thrillers, how about restitution? Because you are a character was actually named after you.
My favorite one.
Good. Good. So if you were, I'm just curious, if you are you able to do that sort of on the fly?
Yeah. Yeah. So first what usually happens is you've got everyone that's got their hand in the air. So if you want me to keep on going, you're going to have to like put your hand in the air. For people that aren't familiar with how a live auction works, because I realize not a lot of people have been, what I'm going to do as the auctioneer is I'm going to say a dollar amount. And if you are willing to pay that amount for the object, you're going to put your hand in the air, and then it just keeps going until we have no one putting their hand in the air. And so you sell. And I'm going to go, because obviously your books are amazing. So I'm going to start at 100, 100, 100. I need 100, 100, 100. John, you got to put your hand in the air if you want to. No. Oh, you're going to do subtle. Okay, subtle. There we go. I've got 100. Now I need 125, 125, 125. I've got 125. How about 150, 150, 150, 150 over there to the left. Now I need 175, 175, 175. I'm looking for 175. We've got it right there. Now I need 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. Come on, guys. You want to go home a winner? I need 200, 200, 200. And sold 175 to the gentleman that tapped his hat. So that's what you do. Usually you do going once, going twice, and then sold, but we were wrapping it up.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think that's a really interesting talent for sure.
YouTube, so, I'm telling you, YouTube and practice. That's what it is.
There you go. Well, you do it well, and you do all kinds of things. Like I said, you MC events. You're based out of Casper, Wyoming. Is that correct?
So technically, we live in a teeny tiny little town called Glen Rock, which has 2,400 people and a 4-way stop. So technically we live outside, but a lot of my work that I do is in Casper. And now, which is really cool, I think, the Prairie Wife brand, when I left the radio station and just focused on building that, now I MC auctioneer. I've got an event in Nebraska at the end of the month. So pretty much wherever anyone wants to pay me to go to, I'll do it.
Excellent.
Not in an OnlyFans kind of way. Let me just reiterate.
Yeah, no, let's make that clear, people. Let's get that clear. So, can you tell people how to learn more about you and follow the adventures of Prairie Wife?
Yeah, so the best thing to do if you're really invested is social media, because I post multiple times a day. I share a lot of past content. Again, I've been doing this for 10 years, so thousands of articles that I've written. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I would say Facebook is the best in my opinion, just because not only do you get the pictures and the video you get on the other ones, but you also can have links to the articles. You can see a lot of the events and charities I support and work with. And then of course there's prairiewifeandheels.com, which is my website. Over the summer, I really focus on the kids, so there's not a lot of new content there, but now that it's about to hit, they go back to school on Monday. So I'll be able to, have more time to focus on writing articles and doing more of that throughout the rest of the year.
Excellent. And we'll put everything in the show notes there too, the links
you.
So you can find Cathy easily. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. This was great talking to you face to face like this, in a way, digitally face to face. But
yeah, I'll take it. This was really fun. Thank you.
I'm glad. I had a good time as well. And I don't know. I want to wish you continued luck with everything. I think Daly Express listeners will enjoy this episode, and hopefully go on out to Wyoming if they've never been there. Check out the sites. A lot of cool stuff out there. So thanks again.
It's a good state. I highly recommend it for visiting. It's not for everyone for living, but for visiting, most people come away with a good impression and some great memories.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Cathy, thanks a lot.
Thank you.